Thank you very much. So we're sitting here in a warehouse full of the stuff, the steel that kind of makes this city's heartbeat, Hamilton. And as mayor, I know you're worried about the city, and don't sugarcoat it, but if we're staring down tariffs and possibly counter tariffs, what happens here on day one?
We already have a difficulty when it comes to affordability in the city. If we see massive layoffs, that's not only going to impact, the primary and secondary steelmaking that happens here and those companies and those workers, but it'll ripple through the rest of our economy.
Would you anticipate layoffs right away? And how many?
I would say there has been some already. Orders have dried up on the dockets of a number of companies. They've told me that already. And so there have been some layoffs. Now, some of those companies are a little bit cyclical in terms of their production, but it's troubling. The signs are very troubling.
So Rahim, that probably speaks to your reality because you run a small steel firm, and you've already, just the threat of tariffs have already had a cost for you, right?
Absolutely. I think just the threat of the tariffs led to order cancellations from our American distributors, and our Canadian distributors decided to stop taking new orders from the U.S. as well too. So although it's still early days, we're already experiencing about a 25% sales drop to start the year.
And as a layperson, it's not enough to just sort of ship more stuff early. That doesn't do it. That doesn't help, right?
No, unfortunately, our American distributors no longer want to take possession of the goods because their concern as well too is having a consistent supplier. It's very difficult to manage a business environment when the prices could change drastically overnight. I mean, it's 25% today. Who knows if it's going to be 40% tomorrow, 50% the day after. And it just creates a very difficult business environment.
So we hear lots of talk about the prospect of counter tariffs, and there is this emotional desire to punch back, and I think that satisfies the emotional desire. But if Canada were to hold back on the counter tariffs and let the dollar drop, would that give you and other firms a sort of competitive advantage to help you hang on?
I'm not sure. I feel like it's a double-edged sword because while it may give us an advantage in order to export back into the U.S., at what cost does it come to Canadians over here? If there's less money in Canadians' pockets, that gives them less money to spend on goods like ours as well too.
Are you going to be okay?
I believe we will. I mean, Terry Fox taught us that everything is possible if you try. So we're not going to bury our head in the snow. We're going to wipe the sweat off our face with a towel instead of throwing it in, and we're just going to keep pushing harder. And if we receive support from the government, I think the opportunity exists to have a very thriving Canadian steel manufacturing market.
There's a good Canadian answer right there. So, Keanin, your job, as I understand it, is to help the steel industry flourish in this country. So, if that's to happen, where do you start? What needs to start happening?
Well, we need to, as a country and as provinces across this country that invest in our infrastructure, we need to make sure that going forward, that infrastructure is made with Canadian fabricators, Canadian steel, if we make it here in this country, and with Canadian labor. Even before the tariffs, even before Donald Trump, we've documented billions of dollars of projects, taxpayer-funded projects, both federally and provincially, and then a lot of private sector projects that have gone overseas. And that's something, if we could get that spending back here into this country, that would go a long way to ameliorating the impacts of these tariffs.
So I don't know if that's a long-term thing, a short-term thing. I mean, we're talking weeks now before this happens. Is there anything that can happen in the next few weeks to make a difference?
Well, we can negotiate ourselves out of this. I think the big thing is, obviously, we need to let the Americans know that there will be pain, there will be impacts. On day one, Donald Trump, at the stroke of a pen, increased costs of pretty much every product and every project in the United States. Yeah, it's hurting us, but it's going to be hurting them as well. And that's what reciprocal tariffs are all about. It's going to hurt our industry for sure, but we know we have to do our patriotic duty.
A question that we get all the time from people, as we talk about Canada's success in exporting steel and aluminum, why does Canada need to import any? As a layperson, sometimes it doesn't make sense if Canada has so much of it and exports so much of it.
This is the thing with 30, 40 years under a free trade regime, right? Companies here in Hamilton, companies in the US have found their niche within the continental supply chain. I mean, that was the whole purpose of NAFTA and then USMCA, CUSMA. And so the one thing that's really important for us to understand here in Canada, though, You think of your typical I-beam, right? What we call Y-flange in our industry.
That's something that
Yeah, it holds
goes-
up hospitals, schools,
Right.
Apartment buildings. We don't make that here in Canada. We have 13 producers. Again, they're doing a really great job within their own supply chain, but there's just some things that we need to import here into Canada.
Can't Canada make that?
Well, I think that would cost a lot of money. I'm not saying we can't. We'd have to talk to some of the steel producers, but right now we don't.
So that's a long-term reality there. But as mayor, you've got a short-term situation here that in a few weeks you might have people in great need. So how do you support them? What do they need to stay afloat?
The bottom line is we have services, we have programs, we have those kinds of things. What we need is jobs. Get the federal government and the provincial government engaged in local sourcing, both steel from Hamilton as well as other products. Who knows what the next shoe is going to be dropped, making sure that those supply chains are opened up, making sure that we're finding markets outside of the one across the border to help us get our goods to market. There's a lot of things. Not many of those are able to be leveraged locally, but what we certainly can do is fight for the jobs, for the investment, for the companies that are here in Hamilton. Our city has diversified its economy significantly, but steel is still, I think you called it, the beating heart of our city, and it certainly is tens of thousands of jobs.
But you need supports too, because you've got weeks. I mean, that's a great list, but I don't know how you do that in weeks.
Well, I mean, exactly. So we don't have the financial capacity to pour the money in to keep those workers working. But what we do have is the ability to make sure that we are leveraging our voice with the other orders of government to ensure that folks are not left stranded, to ensure that companies are not forced to close their doors.
Rahim, Donald Trump has said, listen, your problems would go away if you would just move your business to the United States and the workers that go with it.
Mm-hmm.
What do you say to him and to Canadians about that?
I would say that's a non-starter for us. Insulin was created in Canada and is available to all Canadians. In the US, they charge $500 for it. That alone tells me what country I want to live in. I believe in the country. I believe in Canadians. I believe in our economy. We want to support the economy here and create jobs. And we believe that the manufacturing industry can thrive here with the right support from the government. Something like a GST break on goods that are made in Canada specifically could provide a huge boost to manufacturers like us, and on top of which it could help protect the Made in Canada brand, which is kind of getting diluted from companies that create the impression that their products are made in Canada or that they're Canadian companies when they actually aren't.
Okay. You're staying put?
Absolutely.
Okay. Mayor Horwath, Rahim, and Keanin, thank you very much. Appreciate you all taking the time for us.
Thank you.
Thank you.